So in this part, we will talk about the tools that you might start creating or identify on the net um, that will allow students to actually manage complex texts and create complex texts. And you might say, well, how is that relevant for a seventh grader? Point really is that the seventh grader will be doing loud with you for what, a semester, maybe two, and might go on or not. The thing is that I wanted to say is there is actually pedagogically everything wrong with an expectation that we need to do simple things in a simple way. A seventh grader is not a simple person. That's the first thing. Secondly, if you believe that students should be doing simple things in a simple way, then what would the simple be? And what I want to actually encourage you to try is a different meaning of simple than we used to use, or people used to use on me, for example, when I was little and I was learning my languages. The many I have learned. And definitely not because of studying at school or being actually overseas, none of that. In fact, it was hard work, but not done in a way that they were trying to teach me at school. I always got best grades, I got all the scholarships, never learned the language in school or at the university. In Poland, I studied German for 4 years, and we had 35 to 40 hours of only German. So our German was not like in Australia, 2 hours per week or something. It was only German. So we studied history in German, literature in German, philosophy in German, language in German, everything in German. So there was no, we had German lecturers, people who, so once I got to my Institute of German, or cathedral, or whatever you call, chair, I don't know what you call it in English, there's no equivalent. Let's call it an institute, because that's what the sections were. Every university had sections. So mine was the German section, German studies section. All was in German. You couldn't speak to anyone in Polish, right? So despite of that, I still didn't learn it there. I actually had to do a lot of thorough reading of my own, picking up stuff I wanted to read and learning as I was reading. And even then I could have done better by using more, by referring more to the dictionary than just relying on my own intuition. Or even, turning those readings into maybe something that I could actually make presentations about and talk and engage in. But anyway, just doing a lot of reading boosted my German immensely. So that was actually a big breakthrough for me, despite of studying German since I was 14. So what I would like us to do is to take a different take on simple. So if you are happy, or if you are happy because of your beliefs, to concede that you do not expect your students to produce um, you know, 5,000 pages after semester one in a specific load you teach. If you concede that, not also you concede that maybe they will not have a full command of grammar at the end of time with you, why not concede something else? Like, for example, they will be playing with complex text. They will be trying to make sense out of them. They will be trying to construct complex text in a specific load, and they will do it what a conservative teacher would say badly, right? The grammar will be all over the place. But we just said that even if they didn't do it this particular way, their grammar would be all over the place in any case. They might actually control 3 or 4 moves, but we know that once they speak or once they want to do something complex, it will be all over the place, right? So the pedagogy of compliance and doing progressively, today we do past tense and tomorrow we will do some other tense. Nobody talks like that. Nobody learns language by segmenting it into tenses. We learn a meaning of tense by learning all the tenses at once. One of the problems with the way we used to teach English as a second language was that none of us migrants actually learned the meaning of tenses in English, because we were taught all the tenses separately. So the tenses didn't actually acquire a meaning in relation to one another, but in relation to my Polish language. That was really a bad idea. So whether I should say things like I went or I have gone beats me. I never even go into things like I had been, no, I had gone or something. You know, this things with I had gone or I had or had I had been or whatever. You know, I don't go even there because that we never covered. Just wasn't enough time in the semester. So that you can laugh, but that was so silly. Anyway, so what I'm saying is, if you can concede that your kids will not learn everything, why don't we just concede that maybe we will give up on the traditional simple 3 characters per week and we give them all the characters they need and all the tenses they work with, because they will be there in the text, and we will just patiently see what they do with it. So the difference is we are not sequencing material for them, we're giving them tools to reveal for themselves the relationships in text as they need them and as they discover them, and they will produce whatever they will produce. Won't be a Shakespeare, but it wouldn't be in any event, right? So let's go the other way. Give them all and they will pick from this what they need, as opposed to give them a little bit and they will pick even less from that, because it was the choice was never theirs. Now, when I will be talking about tools, I will be jumping between different aspects of tools. That's because it just seems to me the best way to do that. So some time ago, I thought that I was one of the people who actually were leading a professional development course or program uh, that Caroline Broadbent managed to get some money for at the Catholic University in Canberra. So that was good. So we had the stuff, and I created this website to actually have some resources forever on that side and on that site and so on. But what I actually did with teachers when I had my little time with them, I gave them an idea. If you click here, oh my goodness, you'll get to Ni Hao Hai. It's like hi, right? Because ni hao is hi and hi is a high. So ni hao high is like a high school, right? high school or high. That's just a play on words. Now, remember, I don't speak Chinese. So a lot of stuff which is here, I just picked up from somewhere just to have some Chinese characters or made it up or whatever, right? But you can actually do better than that. So what it is, it's actually a class website in Chinese. So I know that schools go bananas and say we don't want our names and pictures of our students on the thing. Well, don't put them there. You can do other things, or you can actually protect the site and make it only available to your sisters, to other classes, or to the entire school, but not beyond the school, or you can make it available between the people who actually have interest in these things. So for example, sister schools in China or other schools in the area that teach Chinese. So that you can actually regulate using Google sites or maybe other websites. You can actually regulate who has access to your site. But you know, if you don't put the names and whatever, well, there you go. Just you can do lots of things. And if you take photographs like from far away, if you want to actually have a newsletter and you put news here on a generated one or maybe more, no, just one, because that was just an example. But you can see how much fun students would have to use the website as a way of using Chinese to engage in life. So to engage in life in Chinese, to engage the connections that the knowledge of Chinese makes possible. So it could be connections in Australia, could be connections overseas, right? So the idea is now to actually use Chinese to do amazing things. And some of them, honestly, I can imagine some teachers in previous schools would be really upset about. But if you take a Google Translate mechanism, and we all know about Google Translate, all you have to do in Google Translate, right, is to enter the text in English. So this will be your English. And you would say, well, does this teach them Chinese? Well, what's going to pop out at the end? It's going to be Chinese. And as I said, give up on something, and especially give up on control. And right, so I am a student in Australia. Oh my goodness, things popped out. And you can see that kids can actually copy this as it is, and put it into their website. And you would say, well, what learning is here? Well, they can also learn how to actually, so they can use Google Translate on their own without you always being in control of the things that students explore and the sentences they write and so on. So every group, every student student even in the group can create their own bits of the text and then share it with the group, as we spoke before, and then groups will be sharing with the rest of school, of a class, pardon me. So, but the student can actually listen to how to say it, right? Right, you can't hear it because my system doesn't allow you to hear what I hear. But yeah, you can, so, and then they can actually try to pronounce it. And there are, of course, so they can actually pronounce it like this. You can actually give them also access to systems like speech to text. And I'm sure that Chinese people have speech to text. And it would be fun if they could actually play this till the cows come home. And this is actually the advantage of you not being there, because if 25 students in your class write 25 different sentences, you cannot control the pronunciation of all of them. But if all of them can have headphones on their iPads or in the group, they can actually share together a computer. Remember, I didn't tell you that yet. I am very much for students having their own computer, but I actually like the idea, just like Sujata Mitra has shown in his hole in the wall experiment in India. Actually, things worked better when students were not only of mixed age, but when they all only had one computer, right? Because it generated discussion. A student was not stuck with their own head only. People could actually contribute, and some people say, well, maybe we do this, maybe we do that now, maybe you could, right? So that was a bit more inspiring and collaborative, as opposed to one person sitting in front of the screen and being on the mercy of their own little, you know, head. Okay, so here it is. It's very simple. But you know what's the advantage of it? That your students with a Google Translate can actually create a whole website about something that they would like to say in Chinese in no time. In no time. And it doesn't mean that that this is all that they do. You can then actually, if you can actually encourage them to produce a recording on the website. So the website doesn't just have a text like you saw on my site that I exemplified to you before, but the website can have a recording. I will show you some other things I had on this website to show you how the recording actually makes sense. I just have to find it. So I created different links here on the right. So some resources, some sort of stuff. But is there here a Mandarin Teachers R class? And look at that. Students can actually post their own projects. I don't know, I made up this, so don't trust me. This is probably not, I don't know what, I've done it so many years ago, I don't even know where I stole this Chinese text from, whether it was from Google Translate or from some article about something else like economy. But yeah, so we have here some Australian cooking. So what do I have here? So how did we do that? Well, how did we do that? They could actually create a PowerPoint or a video. And in order to create a video of how they do that, they can get a text from Google Translate, and then they can actually use the Google Translate microphone to actually train themselves to pronounce it. And if you found a program, sometimes they are free programs, where you have speech to text for Chinese people, because people actually in Chinese probably also dictate things to the microphone, to the computer, right, through the microphone for things to be written. If you found it, they could actually test the quality of their pronunciation, because if the computer understood whatever they were saying in Chinese, then the stuff they were learning through Google Translate must have worked. But I've done some other things here, so I might just go back, a bit more interesting. Ancient tales today. The Tale of Two Pots. That links you to a author's. Oops, I've lost it. We will get it. It's just very hard to show websites. So this links you. Ow! I know where it links you. I'm just gonna get there. This should be built in a presentation, but it's not showing very well because of the age of this website. So where's my Tale of Two Pots? So they could have watched this one. So this is a Tale of Two Pots produced by someone else. This is on AuthorStream here. So you can actually play it. It's a whole, it's got Chinese music. So here's some good old Chinese wisdom. That's probably in English. And even if it was in English, it doesn't matter, because they can take this text and create a tale of two pots in Chinese, the way I was saying before, which means to actually use the understandings they developed in. This is not working very well when I actually run the screen recording. But basically what students would be doing here is putting into Google Translate their text about the, oh come on friends, just move on. I can't make it go. So they can actually find in the Google Translate how to say the title, The Tale of Two Pots. So the unhappy can was leaking. So the woman had two pots. Okay, so you might actually get a link to you. I don't know whether you have a link to these PowerPoints, but basically students can display a work like this with their own voices recording the tale. So it will be a text in English, a text in Chinese, and also them themselves reading it in Chinese, because before they were exercising their Chinese skills using computer systems that were allowing them to do that. And all of a sudden, they go home and they can actually, and you could also take, okay, so they go home and they can show to parents how much they have actually done you, while learning Chinese with you. Also, if you have several groups, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, each of them can actually do different things and start building up the website. So with every project that students do, you build up a website of the Chinese website of a school. And in fact, you can actually so people could use it for different purposes. So students from different subjects could be using this to learn a little bit about China and Chinese culture. People from literacy could learn a little bit about aspects that are actually included in the website and collected by your students. So you can see how one project, that projects in Chinese can actually be also of value across the curriculum. Now, one of the things I also wanted to say is that when students do such complex things in such simple way, in such a simple way as I just showed you, what happens also, uh, we, 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 we do amazing things. Students can actually, you can also create events where students will be displaying their PowerPoints, displaying their projects to the community, school community or broader community, or even the Chinese community. But we also are running away from the model where I have a friend, little Thea in Sydney, and she goes to prestigious schools because her parents are artists, so they live in the center of the city because people in suburbs are not likely to buy to spend too much money on artistic things. So all their clientele is in the city. Anyway, for so many years she studied Japanese, and all she can say is that with a bad teacher she for 1 or 2 years only learned to count to 10, and with a good teacher she now can count to, I don't know, 30 or something. Now, oh my god, like, oh my god, I thought to myself, and I'm just gonna leave it there, okay, because you can actually add the link, complete the sentence, oh my god, yourselves, really. Now, but imagine you have all these Chinese communities hanging around. I mean, we're talking about Chinese, but every other lot that you are teaching, you will have people there. So as we are talking about Chinese, so as students are actually doing all these websites and decorating it, I mean, where do they get these pictures? I had those simple pictures, but you know that if you go to Google Images, they can actually get so many amazing pictures of in this, for example, case of Chinese vases, of Chinese cans or vases, right? So they can actually make this PowerPoint really with the Chinese rhythms and Chinese colors, and there will be a whole expression. They might actually recreate tales of different regions as well. So you teach them cultural sensitivity and actually demographic knowledge. Now, so you can see when you actually do the things that we were talking about in the portfolio, oh, pardon me, we were talking in, what do you call it? We were talking about the curriculum, right? When you actually expand your understanding how to read the curriculum, how much you can actually create, how much is involved in even simple activities. Now, when you actually put it into practice, um, you can see that the world is bigger than just couple words and grammar. And I'll show you something else. So when you have all these students trying to create all these characters, and just they basically copy and paste from Google Translate. But now you could ask them, if we were to create an advertisement for other people to actually come and watch our website, right? How would we do that? So they've done all this plagiarism by using stuff from Google Translate and all of that. That's all cool. They can read, they can write, and all of that. They can read and they can speak it, right? So that's cool. But how do we do this? So rather than teach them typical writing, this is the stroke, why don't we just make it special, right? Why don't we just make it special and do a calligraphy lesson? So you do these things like this guy is doing. You invent some paper, and you actually can bring people from the Chinese community. I actually had it as a video, but obviously not in here. I'll just find one. I hope it works here. Come on. Right. So you invite some people from Chinese community, or you take your children to the Chinese community somewhere where kids can be exposed to the entire elegance of writing, of doing calligraphy, right? Elegance of doing this. So later on, they could play actually some games if you found any, or you could create yourself, like we did in part 1 or part 2. I can't remember, with hiragana, right? Those sort of online games, simple games, and so on. But make it special, because now kids are not learning to write characters, which is the nightmare in every other. This is all fun. And this is they're learning actually the entire event they absorb like something special. They don't even know that this is about writing Chinese. This is about doing something extraordinary, right? So that's what I'm trying to inspire you. Complex things, complex tasks and possibility to give students resources so that they freely explore and create complex things, open room for amazing things to happen. So we no longer are slaving around and sweating around to remember 3 characters in Chinese, 2 sentences, and if you're lucky, you can actually count to 10. We're just doing amazing things. And if kids stumble, trust me, I stumble. I've been learning. I've been here in Australia for 30 years, and what you hear is the best I could do within those 30 years. So why don't we just give up on the idea of being perfect and try to actually. And now, would I be doing these things that I just showed you in the exploratory phase? Absolutely, I would, because the exploratory phase is no different from the phase where students actually do their own projects. Because when they do their project, they still will have to then explore things. The difference is that now when they do their projects, they are more focused. They know what to look for because they actually created with you a plan of the objectives, and now they know what they will be after and so on. But the idea of exploring, comparing, contrasting is still there. So, so other than what I showed you before on the web, I don't know whether this could have been a video. These are links basically to the things that people do, say in Korea, right? They're all into this amazing drumming. Um, so, and in China as well, right? And in Japan as well. So Asia is very much about drumming. I think Indonesia as well. So it's very interesting to actually show to students all this world, so that our students do not end up knowing how to count to 10. What else? So these are the kind of things that are on the net that you can actually pull out and share with your students. So this is another thing that I did here. I think it was something to do you see this sort of amazing drumming they do. You can't hear it, but it's crazy, but it's amazing. So what you can do with students is actually watch it. You can do with students, they can watch, explore all of that, and they might actually put up on the website, on the Chinese website or whatever website you're creating with them about loud. This is what they do in China. This is what we do here in Perup, right? Something amazing as well. Maybe not like this, but something amazing for us, and might actually look ordinary to us, but it's amazing for people who actually don't do these things on a regular basis into the degree that we do. So I was talking before that when you actually, this is something that some of my undergraduate students were doing, exploring the animals, exploring them. So you have the world with different poses of animals. Every time you click on something, they take you to different videos and games either created by the teacher or online, with children exploring the habitat of these continents about animals. So as I said, a lot of games which are online are not very interesting, but it all depends how you actually build them into the resource. So I have in my portfolio, my own portfolio, Anja Lion on, in Darwin sort of Google sites. Somewhere there I have educational hub portfolio of my own, and I actually have thousands of those games there, wherever they are. So I've got stuff. So this is my site, so Google Sites and Anja Lion Darwin. So so if you go to Education Hub, I actually created for myself a number of things, but one of them I did was here, the resources. This has many resources here, but this one I call them ESL, but it's not just ESL. It's just all kinds of games I have there, so I can actually use them. So they're all links here to different games. So, for example, so this game is great. So this is for teaching English, but this is a great. They have a lot of amazing games online for cooking because you can actually move objects. I am not gonna do it here. I hope I recorded it on some other video that is available in the modules. But yeah, so per se, a game like this is alright. Doing 3 of them, you'll just cry out of boredom. But if it is integrated in a resource like that community resource I was showing you, that this person is a cook and he does this person is from Indonesia and this is her favorite meal and so on. So that's a different story. Another tool I was showing to you before is Avatar. Avatar, so this is the link. If you don't have the link, then I think you just look for the word. I tell you for the word you look. I think I cannot, oh my goodness, I cannot control this here. Oddcast, ODD cast, C-A-S-T. But I'm sure you have a link somewhere in the modules to it. So the avatar has many languages and you enter the text and the avatar will read it to you. Fantastic. So they can put all the Chinese characters. They don't have to listen through the Google Translator. They can also listen through here. This is the speech to text in English. It has a little fault. It has 2 faults, and both are reasonably all right. One of them is that it often doesn't get things right, and that's wonderful. We are so stuck on that pristinity. When Google Translate is not getting things right, you can actually play with it and compare and contrast with the written text in the Google Translate, and so it actually encourages you to more interactive assessment of the text that it spits out, and that's lovely. So when it gets it right, when it does get it right, that's okay. But when it doesn't, students can actually check. Right, so they can check how many syllables did I say, and in Chinese the characters stand per syllables or per words. Did it actually spit out as many characters as it should, considering how long I spoke? Right, so all these things that you actually teach as explanations, in fact here they can test through practice and play in a playful way. So what next do I have? This is text to speech in English again. So when you actually, so that's another software. This is Natural Reader, but you have to see for a language of your interest. So people talk and that actually types. Then this is another one. This is for English. So that what happens here, you establish the speed by which this particular program spits out words of the specific text that you have actually inserted there, and kids have to read fast enough to be with the pace of that software. So I hope it will show you. Come on, move. There was a burst of light and a fairy appeared. Don't be alarmed, Cinderella, said the fairy, right? And so on and so on. And that's a lovely thing for students. It's a game. It's a game. It's a reading exercise, right? Do not worry about it, whether it's scientifically correct and whether it has evidence in practice that if students said it 5,000 times and it worked. Who cares? It's playful, it's wonderful, it's competitive, and all of that. This is the software I don't use. I will show you something else I use. So it's for displaying. This is you record your voice and it comes out. This is Audacity. I don't like Audacity. I find it clumsy, shows nothing, and I just don't like it. But students can actually, once they recorded themselves, they can actually select particular bits of it, and they can hear themselves in the as they recorded only the things that they actually select. So that's quite good. You can also record a Chinese text, and then students are able to control how much of it, which bits of the volume here, because these are just frequencies, which means you can actually see how much volume was actually presented as a person was talking, so they can actually see where the voice was not happening, where there was some voice, so they can select bits and they can do a listening comprehension in a sense, because they actually listen to Chinese text you recorded for them, and they will listen to the bits that they select themselves. So that's quite good, because they can actually listen to longer and shorter bits of that text, and that gives them control. So that's quite nice. Let's Google Translate. This is something that my husband does, and you can think for yourself how to plagiarize it, but in a simple way, right? Unless you find someone who can actually do it for you. So this is a video recording. These are the text. This is a text. So students only see some stars, but students, if they listen to the video and want to actually, this is an intelligent answer evaluation program. Now this is really complicated. So basically, students can actually write themselves what they heard, because the program allows them. But if they don't know, they can actually select a word. Remember how on the Audacity they were selecting words by just clicking on the wave? Here they can actually click on the stars, and each star has a one word recorded underneath it. You could do it simply in PowerPoint as well, because or even in Word. Word has a function which is insert voice command. You look for it. Type it on Google how to find insert voice command in Word. So each word could be actually a recorded file. So you could do that too. Here you can actually record by inserting audio file underneath each of the words. So each word can have their own audio recording, so you can do it too in a simple way. But anyway, this program does more than this. But what my principle here that I'm trying to sell to you is, the more students can control the text, the less they need you, but the more complex text they can actually work with, right? Because they have tools to actually, okay, this one says this, one says this, oh, okay. They could, you can actually view the whole transcript. You can view it in Chinese. This one is probably in English, but you could view it in a specific language, or you could view it in, so you could view it in English, or you could view it in Loud, depending on which version you want of the transcript. But yeah, so when students actually give up and can't actually work out what this boy was talking about, they can just click on all, click on transcript, and all the stars will turn into a text that the student should have been able to actually work out by himself or herself. Now there's 5,000 different things connected to this program, but that's pretty good. But whatever we have done over the years to enrich this particular listening comprehension system, all of this was about giving students different ways of playing with text, right? So different ways of learning about relationships in this text. And that's what I'm saying. It is not about giving them little, but it's about giving them tools so that they can break the text down for themselves, and they can and play with it. So this one also has pronunciation here on the bottom, all these things, which is compares, you can compare students' version with a native version. You can record yourself and so on. You can do it through Google, through speech to text as well. So it's maybe not as sophisticated, not as fast. I've got other systems as well. We created ourselves, but all of them require a little bit of practice. So maybe I will introduce them in semester 2. But at this very moment, all I want is just a principle that supporting students management of text. And remember, I was talking about learning as management of information. So supporting students management of text allows them to reorganize the way they approach a text. And in that way, they build increasingly sophisticated understandings of how to be in a particular language they are studying. Okay, one thing that this doesn't have, because it didn't exist yet, but I invented this very recently, is something I'll show you now. Well, it did have something, but it was part of something else, of a different database. So basically you can see that at this very moment, this is all about guessing the words, right? What this guy is saying. So it's basically based on words. This text would have been a part of a larger database of enabling students to actually do some exploration of culture of investigating this text from the cultural perspective. But I've done some other things since then, which I actually like better. So imagine that one of the texts, one of the texts that your students found. I mean, I'm just playing with this one because I work. I don't have time to do all this stuff for every load and for literacy students of mine as well. So here it is. This is just an example. So they found this text, which is the Aesop's fable, The Lion and the Mouse, right? So one day, a mighty lion, tired from hunting all morning, lay down to take a nap under a large shady tree. All right, so it's a story. And imagine it's all in Chinese, so this is just way over their head, right? But I'll just, obviously they can put it into Google Translate, they get all of this, and they can break it down for themselves, what each letter says and what it all means and so on. So that's great. But some other things I wanted you to, what you can do with the text to actually show to students how to make a better understanding. What I did here, this is my own website. I use the capacities of Google Sites to create a primitive database. Obviously, my husband will be really looking at it thinking like, oh my God, but he doesn't have time to do things for me. So here it is. And you cannot have my husband either, right? So basically what I'm suggesting, we better just learn how to use the resources that we have. So look at this. I created this database myself using Google Sites, list. So instead of, I created a page and I said I don't want it to be a web page, I want it to be a list. And it allows me to create this. So it allows you to create all these categories yourself. So I just created them. And look, Aesop fable. Remember, I'm sure I was teaching in this unit. I showed you some how to work with text. If you think of text as a structure, so the structure starts with focus, then it's a disturbance, then it's a dialogue, then it's development of sorts, then it's resolution and the moral, right? And I said that every text has the same structure. Not only that, when authors or even us ourselves in any situation we are, when we do these things like set the focus or when we actually go through the development of the text, we actually do not produce words, right? So the idea of teaching students words is a little bit inefficient because it's not theoretically sound. Words don't exist. They only exist for a linguist who writes them down. Well, but lots of things exist in that way. Emptiness in the room exists there too, so why don't we just teach them nothing? Because for a physicist, the room is empty. It's true. So look at this. So setting the focus, and look what the lion does. So if you click here, listen and watch. So what I'm saying is the lion, and so basically what categories do we have? So we have the Aesop fable, the lion and the mouse, setting the focus. It starts as a mystery. It starts, one day a mighty lion, right? And you can actually here, it will take you to the place in the video because YouTube allows you to do that. What you do, you click on share and then there's a little box that comes out. Oh my goodness, you probably don't know, so I better show you. So if you want a video to start here, you scroll down, you go to share. So this is, you want it on 20th second. And then you click here, starts, and then it gives you the link which starts exactly on the 20th second, you see? So I did that. So when my students offload, or even we with our students, with children, if we were to teach them literacy, if we click here, listen to watch, it will take them exactly to that bit. One day, a mighty lion. In the past, you could control YouTube also the ending of the clip. Something happened to YouTube, it got moody and you can't now I mean, you can probably, but it's not really easy. It was very simple back then. But I was just happy just with the beginning. So look at that. So what was it? Started as a mystery, but then we still are learning about the lion. So still there focusing, but he's a little bit tired, isn't he? So one day a mighty lion, tired from hunting all mornings, and there's a bit of a frustration there. When you're tired, you're not really in the best of your moods, right? Um, Lay down under the shady tree. I should have written it down. I didn't read. But look what I also have here. I have here you can't see very well, intonation. So the red bit first is one day, because that's English. English always, so look at this, everything is lower than the very beginning because everything refers to the first thing you said right in the beginning. So the first element is always in English the highest because it's a point of reference, it's the most important part. So, for example, in some other class we were discussing if you were to create a sentence and you wanted to start with 2000 years ago, this and this happened. But tragically 2000 years ago? No, 2000 years ago, tragically, this horrible thing happened. You see, you can compare now in English that the more important thing is 2000 years ago, tragically, this happened. So you can see how the relevancies in English actually sequence. The most important one is first, 2000 years ago, tragically, the volcano blew up, right? Not tragically 2000 years ago, unless you want to say tragically 2000 years ago, right? So if you want to say that tragedy was more, that the 2000 years ago was really a bad moment. So it changes the meaning. But you can see this blue thing here. So instead of a sentence where the red arrows show that the sentence should actually go down and down and down from, but we have this rise here, the blue things, because it's an embedded sentence. Tired after hunting all morning. You can see, so it went up. So you can, did you remember teaching grammar? In those awful, those subclauses and everything? Forget it. You don't have to do it everything in a exploratory and direct instruction sort of way. We can actually play to pronounce it the way it is, the sentence pronounced, just by just by actually looking for the high points and guessing at this very moment, guessing where words are. You can use wind pitch program, which is here, where you can actually do it live with students and actually play it. So you see, so you can't hear it, but that's under a large shady tree. Beautiful. That's it. So you can do that also live. And what I also have here, what I have, you can actually hear it. This, where is it? Didn't go. Oh yeah. So I have classified, I have created another, so you can see it actually allows you to download a file, and you can actually do that. You can actually hear it because I've got it twice here. So let's call it B. Oh yeah, it is already called something else. So you save it, and then you can play it with students. I'll show you how I did that. So all of this is slow because we are recording the screen. But the way how I inserted on that sentence here, I used the facility, oh my goodness, I used the facility of Google Sites, which is called Filing Cabinet. And you can see here, you can actually add files, so you can actually upload on your Google Documents actually, but without actually going through your Google Docs. You just click here, add file, you add file here, and I added intonation file. So then when my students want to see a file, a video file, sentence one, but a sound of it, which basically will look like this one here I showed you before, you know, that's what it will look like because I recorded that. So I recorded that and I put it up here as a video file. So I didn't even have to go through YouTube. I just uploaded it here so students can. So you can see how much information you can actually make available for students in terms of how to construct, how to understand text in relation to what different words do in relation to emotion. And so if you want to set focus and you want to start a fairy tale, so how do you start a fable or a fairy tale? You can start with one day a mighty lion, right? So it's a mystery sort of edition. It's a mystery kind of thing. And you can say mystery in Chinese mean this is how you say it, you know. So you start introducing words, even those descriptors like mystery, you start introducing them in Chinese, but you don't pay much attention in making people remember that. But you just say mystery means Hanghua, and then you just move on with it, right? I just made it up. Of course, some of you would actually hear, but I made it up. All right, so you can actually create a database like this, but what you will see, but I didn't do just that. This database doesn't just have one fable, but teaches students of how to express emotions, and as a result create if you express emotions, the text is emotions basically, because intentions are emotions, because you intend to evoke in the reader a particular emotion. But if you actually construct a text and you are aware of what emotions you want to use, you can use this database for examples. So I analyzed Aesop's story, but I also then took Northern Territory newspaper of today, and it just happened that they had a fatal crash, so it's not a very happy story. But students need to know how to report an accident, or don't need to know, but they might want to know. So they can actually have a look at maybe sometimes the same emotions or different emotions, because the reporting on a story might actually call for different types of emotions that the newspaper is using. So the structure is still the same: setting the focus, disturbance, development. It's always the same. That's what I'm saying. The structure is, whether it's a PhD or a fable or reporting on an accident, amazingly the structure is always the same. And they can actually learn. So like you had that text with the boy here, right? We had this text with the boy here. But it would be very interesting now to set it up in a way also for students that they could actually do this kind of investigation of what was in those, underneath those stars, not just words, but actually emotions. I might have indicated before in the in the first part of pedagogy of how to do it, but one of the ways of how to do it. So when students then want to construct their own text, and they go, oh my God. And imagine you have this database and you've got like 30 texts analyzed like this. It doesn't take long because it's all copy and paste, really. So it just takes actually a bit of thinking to think, you know, what emotion is this? Like the lion pitted under the empathy, that was easier. But when I was actually doing the news, like for example, when I was doing the news and I was trying to actually assess what emotion is the news reporter trying to evoke in the reader when they actually say a particular sentence, it just took me a bit of a while to think about some of them, because we internalized, and we know perfectly well how to speak because we internalize the system. But when we are to actually name the emotions, sometimes some of us will be better than others in it, but sometimes it's not that easy. But then when students want to create a fable, they might, you see, this one allows you to actually sort out things. So, for example, I don't know what that means. If they wanted to find out, if they wanted to actually find out all settings of the focus, they could customize this list if they were able to. But anyway, who cares? They can actually look, okay, so in they can go through the database, and if you had some more of those things, they could look for fables or Aesop fables, or they could look for breaking news articles, or they could, and then they could actually see, how different articles start the story differently or describe this, use different emotions for different aspects of a text. So they can through compare and contrast, but maybe in different, the same newspaper but different types of stories. Do they actually what kind of intentions, actually emotional intentions, actually guide this production of the text, and they could actually compare how people actually frame those emotions in words. And that's an exercise that nobody is doing, of course, because I invented that system only just recently. But yes, that would be very nice to see how we actually, what words we draw on in order to actually get these emotions expressed. What kind of strategies, text strategies we use in order for these uh, um, intentions to be expressed. And intentions are emotions, right? So that would be a very interesting way also for students to break into texts. And at the same time, they obviously are learning about they actually acquiring the cultural expression. Now, you might say to me, well, this is too difficult and so on. Well, as I said before, no, it isn't. But also kids, if they decide that maybe some things are harder or easier, they will find ways for themselves with those different tools I'm suggesting to you to simplify things for themselves. And then so they will actually find shortcuts for themselves, and they will manage their load. You can actually then, if you find time, and if you feel that they actually use too many shortcuts, you might encourage them through different inspirations, like let's do something for a community, the local Chinese community, or let's bring the community here, the Chinese people, but also the Japanese and also the indigenous community and the Australian community, and let's do something for them. So for that, those kinds of events actually stimulate and inspire people to do some more detailed work to polish what otherwise they wouldn't. So there. This is something that I cannot really show you very well. So I might just right, I'll just start with this one first. So this is basically many fairy tales. You can actually, if you wanted to point out to students how we actually construct fairy tales or stories like Aesop stories. So there is a particular structure to them. Obviously, not all of them have the same structure, and I have not in the same way. They do have the same structure, but not always is as evident. But it's very interesting. So as I was showing to you before, and you can see that I was already thinking about a database like I showed you before. This one I developed 2 years ago, so I was already on the track of moving towards a kind of emotional analysis of text already 2 years ago. But here it is. So we have a setting of the context, which is a wolf had been feasting too greedily, right? There's a description of the text. Something was happening, and so there's a situation is happening. Then there's a disturbance. Someone comes here, and then there is a dialogue, right? And again, the situation, an ox came down to do some things and someone popped out, so there's a disturbance, and then there's a dialogue, right? That's very interesting. So a number of Aesop stories actually have that sort of interesting, I mean, all of them have it, but the dialogue sometimes is not in terms of words. Sometimes the dialogue actually has a different structure, but it's still the dialogue. But this is very nice to show to them. Look at that. It's a setting of the story, then the disturbance comes, some sort of extra element comes in that will sort of do something, interacting with the wolf, and then there's a little dialogue. So that's lovely. That's sort of visible. For students who study different languages, I mean, this is a system that French PowerPoint has, but I'm not sure I'll be able to show it to you. What it does too, it shows, it's because of the screen. I can't. What it does, this particular system, is that that sentence is actually not on the PowerPoint. it actually moves from from left to right, like we write in English from left to right. So this sentence actually appears from left to right. And then you could, for Arabic text, if you teach Arabic, you could actually use systems that the sentence gradually appears on the screen from right to left, and that actually makes, I think it is Arabic or some other language, I don't know. Anyway, other scripts where people read from right to left, you could actually find PowerPoints with a form of uh, uh, I think it's called typing, or I don't know what the particular animation is called. But actually, when you you sensitize students to start reading from the other side as well, so little exercises of that kind. So what I'm showing you today, and I'll just summarize it because this is good enough, but when we design learning experiences for students, we think global, we think big, we think, exploration of what people do. We give them tools to make sense out of what they actually explore. Um, all these things we were doing before. So they explore different things. We give them tools to to make meaning out, to understand what is happening that they actually are looking at or playing with. Then we engage them in thinking what to do with it. There's this community, there are these people that can we do something for them? Can we create a website to share it with the sister school? Can we do something? Can we have an event and all of that? Then we engage students in building things, building websites, creating books in Chinese, creating multilingual things as well, whatever, creating things. And in order to do all of that detail, in order to actually do all of this, students need, sooner or later, they need to break down things. So we give them tools that enable them to actually break down things and make sense out of things. So language teaching is not so much about sequencing materials. Actually, it's not at all about sequencing of anything. No, looking for some evidence, how many days does it take to learn 3 characters in Chinese? None of that. What it is, it's about looking for tools that enable students to break down text, to actually explore the relationships in these texts in a way that allows them to confront their own assumptions, reorganize those assumptions, and as a result, after this experience, feeling that they have actually learned something. Obviously, this is what I want to teach you today. So those tools could be games, could be, as I showed you, some ready-made available tools. So they could be games which are readily available. They could be games you create. You have on your in your module some games that I have created, like Sam's game. Oh my God, it's not gonna come up, is it? Remember, I've done that. I don't know, all of that you might have somewhere. So I created that game. I created that game with this other game, right? The city where you explore. So you integrate many games in a big environment. So all of that. So you do that. You enable students to do websites so that they can actually share things. So it's all big things and interesting things, and they can share with the world and all of that, and with everyone else. So explorations in order to define a project, and explorations in order to do the project, they all require students access to information and access to tools that allow them to reorganize the way they approach the texts and their understandings about what's happening in those texts. Text being a video, text being a text being anything. One thing that I will add to it, just in case you want to know more, because there's more, how do we, say someone like me, think out things like the emotional database, right? The tools for emotional analysis. How do we think out? How do we think out things, how to support students' pronunciation? What I showed you with pronunciation, the intonation exercises, are basically just a little bit of one little rock of a big mountain of how to actually support pronunciation. The mountain is not really that big because it's quite nice and simple to do it, but I just can't do everything in one semester. But how we do it? Well, we actually study how we study semiotics, which is things about meaning. We study how um, texts work and all of that. But we also study neuroscience, which you might have already got some gist of it throughout this semester. We also study how humans perceive things, and we link all of this together in some amazing and, as you could see, kind of ongoing way. So I was looking at fairy tales as being setting the focus, and then someone comes in and adds element, and then dialogue happens. So that's what I was thinking 2 years ago, and now I actually think of text analysis in terms of um, intentions as emotions, right? So it took me 2 years or 3 years to actually get the. So gradually we integrate all these understandings from different research fields, and we generate tools. So in 2013 I was doing something, but in 2016 I have actually moved on towards developing a whole database for students to interrogate how to start a fairy tale, or how to start different texts of different genres, and in ways that we will choose which emotion we want to um, begin with. I'm not sure whether, so as we were doing, so basically with this, I did it in Vietnam. What we did, we had all these emotions on the top, then we had the structure of the text that was on the left. Sorry, it's really hard to um, show everything. So the structure of the text we have on the left anyway, so I don't have to actually. So the structure of the text, and then what we were doing with students, I might pick this one. This is really bad example, but what we were doing, so we had so many emotions. I mean, I only actually included 3, but as many as you want, as whatever you can imagine. And then this is the structure on the left, the structure of the text. And then we were thinking of creating a poem by choosing any of those emotions we had on the top. So in the lion story, we had appreciation, intrigue, blaming, threat, hope, frustration, fear, blah, blah, blah. So I said, what will we start the poem with? Maybe with something like frustration, like only yesterday my world was over. Right? Okay, well, let's write it down. And honestly, I have to say that we didn't create in Vietnam an inspiring poem, but gee, you know, it was a method. And remember that the first thing you do is always a draft, and then you create a better draft, and we're looking for better words. We're exploring the database of poetry and emotions, in the way that I just showed you before. We explore some more words, more expressions, and so on, and we get actually better at it. But the idea was really we created a 4-line poem, and we didn't even look at the setting of the focus, disturbance, and dialogue. I think I kind of did. I didn't have it then yet. I mean, maybe I did, but not really. I didn't have it that organized in my head yet in November, only in December last year. But anyway, so we decided to have a poem out of it will have 4 lines. So for each line, we were picking one emotion. I mean, you could have any of them here. I mean, honestly, this is not an exhausting list. So the ones you can see on the left is appreciation, empathy, and you can see a little bit of intrigue. Then it's this, then it's this, and it's this. So for first one, we had appreciation. So think of it. No, for the first one, we had frustration or complaint. Life is really miserable or something. You just came up with something. And then, things change. And now, without you, you are the, wind beneath my wings or something. So, but, so that was a draft. It looked quite good. And it was quite a good, nice poem. Then they weren't my students. They were actually practicing teachers of English in Vietnam. Then on Facebook, as I left, they were all writing poems about the things that happened to them. It was nice because we got into that beat, into that rhythm. Yeah, and we had a method. And we had a method, which is pick for 4 lines. For each line, pick a different emotion and see what will happen. So that was lovely. So that's what I'm saying. How we get all of these ideas for tools, we get them by studying things. And, you know, over the years, we refine them and make them better and better. This is just for your own interest. I mean, yesterday I was showing this system to my students of literacy, and I was saying, even when you write your own academic text, like for example, they have to write for me stuff about literacy. So I said, even if you were to write a little story for me on what is literacy, think about it. How would you set the focus? Maybe to intrigue the reader, right? Literacy is one of those concepts it's hard to grasp. Everybody writes it. I don't believe it, but people write that stuff in textbooks. So say it, you know. It's a mysterious thing. We all use it. We all know it, but we don't, you know, to define it. Like lots of things which are so present in our life, you know, like a fish. Does the fish know that they swim in water? I mean, do they? I don't know. And then, you know, so literacy is this, you know, thing that's hard to grasp. Disturbance. Well, you know, we will be teachers. We need to know, because at the end of the day, that's our jobs. So what do we know? What do we know is come up with some dialogue. Some people say this is this. Some people say this is this. Some people say, see what I'm saying? Then development. Which emotion would you want to have now here? This is to impress me, right? This one was to impress me. Notice that. And dialogue was to impress Anya with references. Anyway, so what's the state of things currently, and what do you think, and what's the moral? Why should you know about what literacy is, right? You know, so there. Anyway, so I will summarize. I will just finish it for now. This sort of lesson on the tools to support students' management of information and reorganization of their understandings, how to cope with any load, and as a result, how to learn. I'll finish here, but that's what I wanted to say for now. And I know it's quite complex, and that's okay. That's okay. All right. So I'll see you online.